Big news today. New York just hit pause on part of the physical build-out behind the AI boom. And this is bigger than just chatbots. The real question is, who's paying for all the electricity? On July 14th, Governor Kathy Hochul issued Executive Order 62. It pauses certain new environmental permits for hyperscale data centers for up to a year while New York figures out some new rules. That does not mean that New York banned all data centers or shut anything down. It's a temporary pause on certain new projects and permits. The state says that it wants to protect regular utility customers, water supplies, the power grid, and local communities. And the industry is saying right now that this could push jobs and investment somewhere else. Here's the simple thing for you to take away. AI isn't just a software story anymore. It's an infrastructure story. Before you cheer that this is a good thing to cheer about or panic about, ask yourself three things. 1, who's paying for this extra power? 2, what projects are covered? And number 3, what are local communities actually going to get in return? And those are the questions that are really going to matter way more than the headlines. So save this checklist so that you can use it whenever your state announces a big data center deal. What the order actually does while the state completes an environmental review, which could take up to a year, is basically saying that the environmental department will not issue certain permits for projects that were not already considered complete. After the state finishes the standards that they want to do, the projects will move forward, especially if they can meet the state and local requirements. So saying New York banned all AI data centers is going to get clicks, but it's not really accurate. I'm going to go ahead and show you a video of how the news organizations in New York are thinking about this.
Governor Kathy Hochul imposing a moratorium on new hyperscale data centers, signing an executive order this morning. It comes following months of debate in local towns and villages with concern from community members about the negative impacts. Governor Hochul says the pause will allow the state to take its time setting up a regulatory framework that protects the environment, ratepayers, and the energy grid. Hochul says she wants to ensure New York is the first in the nation to build them the right way.
I want to make sure that if they're going to come, those localities will reap substantial benefits. So when the moratorium ends and the construction of these data centers begins in communities where they are welcome, the people in those communities will get substantial benefit.
Large data centers can store massive amounts.
And that's very, very, very interesting to me. The question about substantial benefit, I think, really puts this into question. You know, they're saying that the completed applications are going to be treated differently and that this is all aimed at hyperscale projects, not the small server rooms in, somebody's office building, maybe at the hospital or whatnot. The question we need to ask is why now? And the reality is it's because AI data centers use so much electricity and water, especially for cooling. The reality is on a per square foot basis, you might actually end up seeing more cooling infrastructure in one of these brand new data centers than you might see for the actual space for something like a GPU. And New York is also looking at ideas like a grid fund and requiring developers to say, hey, look, we're going to actually pay for clean energy generation and battery storage on site and maybe give a little bit something back to the community. And I think that's the real issue. If a utility has to build more transmission lines or power generation for some specific data center, who takes the risk if the project changes plans? Right? Or what changes when the company doesn't actually show up to do the projects? Do regular customers end up paying more for the infrastructure that they have? Will the enterprises that were doing the projects be the one that are going to foot the bill? And New York is basically saying, whoa. Let's slow this down and let's figure this out before we lock ourselves into some very expensive infrastructure decisions. And so for me, I think the strongest argument here for the pause is pretty simple. We want to write the rules before the build out gets too far ahead. And the strongest argument against this is going to be also simple. AI companies can go and do this somewhere else, right? There probably is land in America that could be used for these data centers. And the Data Center Coalition already said that investment and that this work can make investment and jobs move out of state. And that actually could happen. And it's still a prediction from the industry group. It's really not anything proven. But right now, the honest read is this. New York is trying to protect consumers, but they're also risking pushing projects to nearby states. Let's see who ends up paying for the grid upgrades and then watch whether those same projects suddenly are showing up across state lines. So it's interesting to kind of look at this from a different perspective. Why might this be happening now? Well, I feel like one reason why this could be happening now is IBM's recent numbers that really give us a clue about why this fight is starting to heat up and speed up. IBM said that near the end of June, clients shifted more spending towards servers, storage, and memory because they wanted to lock in the infrastructure before the prices rose. They reported preliminary second quarter revenue of $17.2 billion, while their software revenue was up 5%, and infrastructure revenue was down 7%, though the final numbers could change slightly. Now, that doesn't mean that like AI, IBM or AI killed software or anything like that. It just means the physical game right now is getting scarce and is getting expensive enough so that companies will actually buy things proactively. You know, the same way that companies, whenever they saw that oil prices would go, might go and buy more oil or more gas, etc. IBM is saying the same thing. They're saying Gen AI is still growing and is still being strong with their consulting group growing. And they also said that their distributed infrastructure business had one of the best performances yet. 37%, I believe is what it was. The bigger point here is this. Companies may still want AI, but getting the hardware and the power to run it is becoming the hard part. And that's why you have the SoftBank CEO, Masayoshi Son, saying that the world may need almost $5 trillion a year for data centers, chips and energy systems, and other AI infrastructure. That's his estimate. It's not a guarantee by any means. And I don't know if I really believe it, but it's one way to look at it, right? Here's another visual here from his article. And so in this article, you know, he's basically saying, quote, to ask whether AI is a bubble is a foolish question. AI will transform our lives completely and do so in a way that generates profits. Okay, so he's very bullish, as we all know, and he's very much saying that, you know, he's estimating $5 trillion will be needed annually to do that. And so imagine a world where 20% of the world's GDP is replaced by AI. In AI-related industries. And that's kind of the direction that we're going and the direction that this conversation, especially the steps that New York is taking, are really for. They're really to prevent anything big happening, any major investments happening without consumers and the public being, I would say, in somewhat of a driver's seat, or at least in an area where they actually, you know, can benefit in the grand scheme of things from their own communities, you know? And so the question for me is really like whether the next megawatt is going to get paid for openly and fairly, and whether the communities that are near those megawatts are actually going to benefit. So these are the first things that I'm going to look for. Number one, who caused the cost? Is the developer paying for the power generation, the transmission, and the connection upgrades for their project, the one that their data center needs, or are these costs getting quietly spread across everyone else's utility bills? New York is saying it's exploring the developer-funded generation route, where the batteries and the grid are basically funded by the actual developer. Second question, what exactly counts as hyperscale, right? Which projects are paused? Which ones are exempt? If the definition is vague, headlines are going to get way too crazy, and we don't know for some of the major players in the game who are currently working with the government too, right? Anthropic, OpenAI, and Microsoft and others are working with the government. How is this actually going to work, and how are people not going to get confused, right? When it really turns into a mission critical technology. Imagine there's some type of AI service that's used for a hospital in New York City that can use and leverage this AI infrastructure to really help with much more patients. So judge it by the cost details and the legal details, not just what you're seeing online, right? I think for what communities should watch next, it's really going to be about how they benefit, right? New York ordered a community investment framework within 60 days, and it's supposed to guide the local negotiations around the infrastructure, the childcare, the direct support, labor standards, local hiring, apprenticeships, and workforce development. And it sounds good, but a framework is not the same thing as a signed agreement. The proof will be in the deals that follow. And there's a few ways that this could go, right? One, the pause actually works. They get some new standards. Everybody loves them. Government companies get clearer rules. Developers are taking on more of the costs. Projects restart, and there's fewer hidden risks to the taxpayers. The second option, though, is that it turns into delays. Agencies start missing deadlines. Uncertainty drags on, and investment just goes somewhere else. The last option probably is that other states copy it, which I think is probably going to happen, right? These data center MOUs or moratorium proposals, they've already kind of appeared in about a dozen states, but they haven't gone too far. I think this can continue. And then lastly, the market moves faster than the government. So developers just start bringing their own power generation. Bloom Energy, as we talked about, can start just solving some of these problems on behalf of them. And we see that maybe these enterprises and developers don't need as much maybe hand holding and approvals from the government, rather than just the infrastructure to bring their own energy and anything else that they need. So this is what I'd watch for next. the final definition of what covered projects and exemptions are going to come, the utility filings that are going to show who paid for the upgrades. There's going to be some new announcements, I'm sure, in these various states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia that are really going to compete with some of this business. And then let's see what this community investment framework looks like. I'm pretty excited to see it. Is it really going to lead to much better experiences and better lives and wins for the community where these data centers go? You really don't need to be an energy policy expert to read these signals. When you look at the utility filings, you can look for phrases like special contract or minimum demand, interconnection facilities, cost recovery. All these things matter because it stops everyday customers from really paying for secondhand the infrastructure on some of these speculative projects that might just totally change course. And so when a local deal is talking about jobs or separate construction jobs, are these construction jobs or are these permanent jobs? Are they going to be here for 6 months, 12 months? Because data centers can definitely create a lot of construction work. But once they're created or running, they often need much fewer individuals to actually, run them when they're running. So don't confuse some massive investment headline with the actual money that's going to stay in the local community, right? They might spend millions or billions on equipment, but that may not actually mean any local tax revenue. And there are some states that don't even give the tax revenue for things like, server purchases and whatnot. This could not lead to road improvements or direct community payments. So it's really just about making sure you all get evidence that the developer or the projects, whatever it may be, are giving you as a community what they're saying or more than even what you think they might be saying. So there's a timing problem that's happening right now where you have power systems that actually take literally years to plan. You have the AI hardware cycles that are moving so quickly. So if this pause actually takes months, this could end up being really, really, really bad, right? It can actually end up being long enough for a company to just go to another state so that they can actually have a plan that works with the current I'd say global climate in the grand scheme of things. So we'll see if New York ends up finishing the standards on time. We'll figure out if the actual qualifying projects did restart. We're going to figure out if the costs are going to get assigned correctly. And we're going to figure out if other states are going to start following suit, right? Is this going to be an enforceable mechanism to make sure that communities get benefits? Or is this just going to be some vague promises? 2 lazy takes that I would tell people to avoid. Number 1, don't say New York banned AI. They didn't do that. They're trying to figure out a way to lower bills for individuals and get to a place where policy is proven and actually helps individuals in those communities. We don't have any savings yet. We don't have job losses. We don't have anything. But the real important decision and story here is that there is a real important policy test that's happening in New York right now. And we're going to see whether it can actually support the AI build out without making regular people absorb all the infrastructure costs. And I think that's the story for today. It's not a victory lap. It's not an AI obituary. We just have to ask 3 questions. Who's paying? What's covered? And what does the community get? And New York is proving that they really, really, really want to answer those questions ASAP. This is Wadood AI, and this is my builder's read on some of the news this week. Don't hesitate to leave a comment about what you would like for me to talk about in the future. I'm very excited for you to tune in. Thanks.